Hello, everyone. Before we get started, make sure to like and subscribe, and leave a comment saying where you're from and when you watched. That way, YouTube will continue to show you stories like this. Now, let's get started. Asterisk back then, in an ancient village nestled in a gloomy valley, people still whispered about a legend that had haunted generations. It was a story about a ghost wedding that was forgotten, and the ghost bride wandering in the cold mist, leaving chilling scares that made anyone who heard it shiver. That village was famous for its antiquity and tranquility, but behind that peaceful appearance was the darkness of horror stories that never slept. The old people said that every time the full moon hung in the sky, the wind blew through the mossy, tiled roofs. The wedding bells still echoed in the night. Even after 100 years had passed, the story began with a wealthy family in the village. Their only daughter, Anna, was married to a young man from a faraway land. The wedding was planned to be a grand affair, with hundreds of lanterns lighting up the path leading to the ancient communal house. But something strange happened. On the big day, the groom suddenly disappeared. No one knows why, nor has the body been found. The villagers say he was taken by a ghostly force, but some say he never existed. Anna, in her pure white wedding dress, waited all night in the ancient communal house where the ceremony was being prepared. When the rooster crowed, the bride was still sitting there, her eyes lifeless, her lips whispering words that no one could hear clearly. And then Anna disappeared, leaving behind a blood-stained veil. From then on, the legend of ghost stories in the village began to spread. People said that Anna's soul could never be released because the wedding was unfinished, because the pain of being forgotten in the middle of the banquet had not yet taken place. Every year, when autumn comes, the familiar scene repeats itself. Anyone passing by the ancient communal house at midnight will see a ghostly wedding silently appear. The bride in her white dress stands at the end of the aisle, smiling hauntingly, still holding a wilted bouquet of flowers. It was a smile that made many people run away in panic, but there were also curious ones who stayed and then never returned, in a chilling scare that the villagers often mentioned. There was a group of young men drinking alcohol, daring each other to go to the ancient temple on the night of the full moon. They wanted to prove that the rumor was just fiction. But by morning, only one person was left, his face pale, his mouth stammering. In his hair, people saw a few withered rose petals, exactly like a wedding bouquet. He then lost his mind, only continuously repeating that he heard someone calling his name, a soft voice right next to his ear, but there was no one around. Haunted stories like that make ghost weddings even more hauntingly fearful. Anna became a symbol of forgotten resentment. People said she often appeared in the dark, asking lost people if they had seen her husband. Whoever answered incorrectly immediately fainted, dreaming of a strange wedding party where the table was full of ghosts sitting and giggling, while the bride stood in the middle, covered in tears. However, the most terrifying thing was that someone woke up with a strange mark on their wrist, as if tied by an ancient red thread of a marriage ceremony. This further reinforced the belief that the unfinished wedding ceremony was still going on in the world of the dead. The elders recounted that since the tragedy happened, no one dared to hold a wedding ceremony in the ancient communal house. Young people in the village, every time Anna was mentioned, shivered, because there were girls who accidentally saw their reflection in the old wedding mirror. But instead of their own face, they saw a bride with bright red eyes, smiling lips, whispering, "It's your turn." Those chilling scares caused many people to leave the village. to avoid the fate of being bound by the curse. However, no one dared to destroy the ancient communal house. It was believed that it was the place where the bride's soul was kept, and if destroyed, Anna would unleash terrible anger on the whole village. So they just left it deserted, covered with moss, with the doors locked. But anyone who passed by at night confirmed that the lights were still on inside. The wedding music was echoing, and the laughter of invisible guests was humming. Each of those sounds, like endless ghost stories, crept into the mind, keeping people awake for months. There is a detail that few people know, which is that the wedding book that year still exists. It was forgotten in an old wooden box, located in the corner of the village church's warehouse. Each page was yellowed, the ink was smudged, but Anna's name was still clear. The space for the groom's name was empty, like an endless void. Those who bravely read the book said that they heard whispers when turning each page, as if someone was right behind them reading along. Some people even saw new words appear on the paper, written in blood-red ink. "I will come, don't go, anywhere." These chilling scares turned the notebook into a taboo object. No one dared to touch it a second time. Asterisk, the story of the forgotten bride is not just a legend. It has become a bloody part of the village's memory. It is said that if Anna's name is mentioned at midnight, the wind will blow hard, the torches will go out, and the bride's face will appear in the darkness. It is a face that is both beautiful and terrifying, her eyes filled with sadness and hatred. And at that moment, anyone facing her will know that they have become a witness to a horror story that will never end. Tonight, the cold wind blows again. The full moon illuminates the roof of the ancient communal house. It is said that the figure of a girl in a wedding dress has just appeared at the ruined gate, her eyes shining like fire. Perhaps the ghost wedding is about to begin, and the terrible secrets that have never been told will continue to be revealed in the next episode. Hello everyone. Before we get started, make sure to like and subscribe, and leave a comment saying where you're from and when you watched. That way, YouTube will continue to show you stories like this. Now, let's get started. Asterisk, after Anna mysteriously disappeared in the ancient communal house, the village was no longer as peaceful as before. The villagers gradually felt the presence of something unusual. At night, the wind whistled through the fields, the wedding bells echoed, ringing as a reminder that the wedding was never completed. Chilling scares haunted the villagers. They believed that the soul of the forgotten bride was searching for her lost groom, and would not stop until she found him. At first, people thought this was just a coincidence, but as time went on, the phenomenon became more and more terrifying. Children passing by the ancient communal house often said that they saw a woman in a white dress standing in the middle of the yard, her eyes deep black, holding a bouquet of withered flowers. When they called their parents, the scene disappeared, leaving only a cold wind blowing through the rotten wooden doors. Some curious adults wanted to verify, but all returned with pale faces and absolute silence, not daring to recount what they had witnessed. Horror stories spread everywhere, turning the village into a land where strangers did not dare to stop after dusk. One night, a couple from another region passed through the village and asked for shelter. They did not believe the wild stories, so they chose the ancient communal house as their resting place, because they thought it was just an abandoned building. The villagers tried to stop them, but they laughed and still went inside. That night, it rained lightly. Thunder and lightning tore across the sky. People heard sobbing echoing from the ancient communal house, mixed with mournful wedding music. The next morning, the communal house was empty. No one saw the couple again. A few days later, people found a pair of bride's shoes and an old wedding ring on the vacant lot next to the communal house. Those ghost stories made the whole village even more terrified. Gradually, no one dared to approach the communal house after dark. Children were strictly forbidden, and adults only passed by during the day. However, every moonlit night, the lights from inside the temple would light up. Shadowy figures would pass by the door, and the sound of laughter and chatter would echo. Some people swore they heard the master of ceremonies shouting loudly, announcing the marriage, but immediately after that, there was a painful scream that made their skin crawl. People believed that the ghost wedding ceremony would repeat itself, over and over again, forever without end. Many years later, an old shaman from another region heard the news and came to the village. He claimed that he would help the villagers escape the haunting. During the night, he brought bells, a bagua mirror, and charms to the ancient temple. The villagers gathered outside, holding their breath, waiting. They heard the loud ringing of bells, the chanting of spells, and the sound of wailing. A moment later, a fierce wind blew up, blowing away the moss-covered tiled roof. From inside came a creepy laugh, as if hundreds of ghostly guests were singing in unison. The next morning, the door of the communal house was wide open. Only a half-burned talisman remained inside. The shaman disappeared without a trace. From then on, the villagers believed that Anna's ghost was more powerful than any ritual than another chilling scare. A group of scholars who wanted to record the legend came to the village. They brought paper, pens, and cameras, determined to prove that everything was just superstition. They asked the villagers for permission to spend the night in a house near the old communal house. At midnight, they heard a gentle knock on the door. When they opened it, there was no one, only an old wedding bouquet placed on the porch. The group trembled, but still tried to stay calm. By morning, one of them was missing, and on the table was only a notebook with scribbled lines. "I have to go. Anna is calling me." Those haunted stories made all efforts to understand end with loss and fear. People began to realize that anyone who tried to anger or deny the existence of the forgotten bride would meet a tragic end. From then on, the village had an unwritten rule. Absolutely do not mention Anna's name when the full moon is high. If you accidentally say it, you will probably hear light footsteps following, and when you turn around, the bride in a white dress will be standing there, smiling. Horror stories like that haunt the whole village. However, the strangest thing is that some people claim to have talked to her. They say that Anna did not want to harm anyone. She was just looking for her husband. The pain of being forgotten has turned her into a vengeful spirit, trapped in the unfinished wedding night. If someone can replace the groom, perhaps she will be freed. But would anyone dare to sacrifice themselves in a ghost wedding? That question hangs in the air, leaving a chilling fear every time the night falls. Tonight, the bells echo from the ancient temple. A thick white mist covered the entire path, and people saw a hazy silhouette of a wedding procession entering. In the midst of that hazy scene, the bride Anna appeared, her eyes glowing red like coals, her voice whispering over and over again, "You will come, you will definitely come." What mystery was waiting behind, and who would be the next victim of this haunted ghost wedding? Hello, everyone. Before we get started, make sure to like and subscribe, and leave a comment saying where you're from and when you watched. That way, YouTube will continue to show you stories like this. Now, let's get started. Asterisk. As time passed, the village was immersed in constant fear. The story of the bride Anna and the ghost wedding became a ghost that covered every roof, every bumpy, stone-paved road. People no longer dared to hold large wedding parties because they believed that any wedding could accidentally awaken the soul of the forgotten bride. The haunting, chilling scares lasted for many generations, passed down from father to son, like a warning that should never be taken lightly. One winter evening, when the north wind howled outside the forest, a group of traders lost their way and were forced to ask for shelter in the village. They did not believe in the horror stories that the people told, and even laughed at the fear of the remote village. Seeing this, an old man advised, "Tonight is a full moon. Do not step out of the house, and do not go near the ancient temple." But curiosity led them to that taboo place. As the group stepped through the rotten wooden gate, a pale blue light suddenly flared up, as if from hundreds of invisible candles. Inside the ancient temple, incense smoke drifted, and in the middle stood Anna in her old wedding dress, her eyes filled with tears, holding a wilted bouquet of flowers. She turned to look at the strangers, smiling sadly, her voice like the wind whistling through the crack in the door. "Have you seen my groom?" a merchant replied tremblingly, but immediately his shadow was sucked into the dark space behind. The bride. As the remaining group screamed and ran away, they saw the silhouettes of dozens of invisible guests sitting around the banquet table, raising their glasses to toast in silence. It was one of the ghost stories that made the villagers even more certain that Anna would never disappear. From that event, the villagers erected a series of talismans in front of their houses. They hung octagonal mirrors, hung mugwort branches to ward off evil spirits. But nothing seemed to be enough to stop Anna's presence. A village child recounted that every night he dreamed of being dressed in a white wedding dress, forced to walk along a path strewn with dried flower petals. At the end of the path, Anna stood waiting, her eyes as if wanting to devour his soul. When he woke up, the child's hand still had a red mark, as if it was tied tightly by a thread. Those haunted stories made the horror spread even more, like an invisible disease corroding reason. Not only that, every harvest season, when the whole village gathered in the fields, people often heard the sound of wedding music echoing from afar. The sound of drums, trumpets, laughter mixed with mournful cries. Once, a farmer ventured closer to the source of the sound. He returned with white hair after just one night, never saying another word. Those chilling scares were like a mark showing that anyone who dared to interfere with the curse would have to pay with their life or soul. In the creepy stories passed down by word of mouth, it is said that every time someone in the village gets married, the new bride will hear a knock on the door on her wedding night. If she opens it, she will see a girl in a white wedding dress, standing in the dark, holding a rotten bouquet of flowers, softly asking, "Have you seen my groom?" There was a young couple who was so terrified that they left the village that night, leaving the house empty and cold. Such horror stories turned Anna into a lifelong obsession. One night, it rained heavily, thunder boomed. The whole village was plunged into darkness because all the lights were off. In the middle of the night, the villagers heard the clanging of the wedding palanquin, the pounding of the wedding drums. The brave ones opened the door to look out and saw a ghostly wedding procession, vague in the rain, walking towards the ancient communal house. In the tattered white palanquin, Anna sat silently, her eyes shining like hot coals. That image was imprinted in the memories of the witnesses, making them never dare to open their mouths to tell it again. Those ghost stories passed down through generations make the ancient temple even more cursed. People once thought that if they could find the real reason for the groom's disappearance, perhaps Anna's soul would be freed. But through many generations, that mystery remains a void. Some people believe that the groom never existed, that it was all just a cruel trick. But there are also people who claim to have seen the shadow of a strange young man appearing next to the bride in their dreams. The truth is hidden in the darkness, leaving behind a series of chilling scares that people will never dare to forget. Every full moon night, a ghostly light covers the ancient temple. People close their doors tightly, holding their breath as they listen to the wedding music echoing from underground. And when the music stops, a soul in the village disappears without a trace. The question of the fate of those whose names were called in the night has never been answered. Perhaps that horrifying truth will only be revealed in the next part, when the ghosts gradually appear in the never-ending nightmare. Hello everyone. Before we get started, make sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment saying where you're from and when you watched. That way, YouTube will continue to show you stories like this. Now, let's get started. Asterisk, in the following years, the fear in the village grew more and more. People were not only afraid of the ancient temple, but also terrified of their dreams. Someone once said that they dreamed that they were invited to a strange wedding. In their dreams, they walked on a path covered with withered flower petals. On both sides were figures in white mourning clothes, silently watching. At the end of the path, Anna stood there in a torn wedding dress, her messy hair covered in mist. She raised her hand, inviting them to step onto the altar, and as they approached, her whole body suddenly felt heavy, as if it was being pulled down by chains. When they woke up, they always found red marks on their hands like marriage threads. Those chilling scares made the whole village believe that the curse was not only in the ancient temple, but also crept into the dreams of anyone who dared to disrespect it. One day, a young man in the village, named Edward, was determined to find out the truth. He was brave, not believing in the horror stories that the villagers fabricated. Edward sneaked into the old temple at midnight, carrying a lantern and an old prayer book. He hoped to ward off the evil spirits with prayers. When he stepped inside, the lantern flickered, then went out. In the pitch-black darkness, soft footsteps echoed around him. Edward called out shakily, but only heard an echo, a woman's whisper, "You're here, you're finally here." Before he could react, he saw Anna standing before him, her eyes shining, her cold hand touching his. Edward fainted, and the next morning, people found him lying unconscious in front of the temple gate, his hair turning white like an old man's. He could never speak again, only trembling when he heard the wedding bells. Those ghost stories quickly spread throughout the area. After that event, the villagers became even more taboo about approaching the old temple. They believed that Anna was trying to drag anyone into the role of the groom instead. Haunted stories say that every full moon night, a man in the village will be called by name. The call echoes right in the ear, even when no one is around. Once heard, that person will have insomnia, gradually become emaciated, and finally disappear in the night, without leaving a trace. Their family will only find a blood-stained veil or a withered wedding. Bouquet, an old woman, recounted that she had witnessed a ghost wedding with her own eyes. At that time, she was looking for a lost cow at night. When she passed the ancient communal house, she heard the sound of intense music. Looking up, she saw the lantern light covering the communal house yard. Figures in white wedding dresses walking in a row, and among them was Anna, quietly approaching the altar. When she was about to run, suddenly a cold hand was placed on her shoulder, pulling her back. She saw Anna's face right in front of her. Her eyes were red and her smile was terrifying. She screamed and fainted. When she woke up, she was lying in the middle of a deserted field, next to a broken ring. The chilling scares from that story made everyone believe that no one could escape the haunting. From then on, the village became a cursed land. Strangers who passed by felt an unusual cold air, and when asked, the villagers only shook their heads. No one dared to say much. The horror stories just smoldered and haunted. A scholar once came to do research, but after only one night, he ran away, his face pale. The diary he left behind only recorded one sentence: "The wedding is not over." The big question still lingers. Who was the missing groom, and why did Anna have to wait forever in despair? People whispered that if they found the answer, perhaps her soul would be liberated. But who is brave enough to dig deeper into the darkness when every step could lead to death? Tonight, the wind is blowing fiercely, the moon is full, the ancient temple is lit up. People claim to have seen the figure of a strange man walking inside, holding a fresh wedding bouquet. Is this the groom who disappeared 100 years ago? Or just a new soul dragged into the evil vortex? A more horrifying truth awaits to be revealed in the next episode. Hello everyone. Before we get started, make sure to like and subscribe, and leave a comment saying where you're from and when you watched. That way, YouTube will continue to show you stories like this. Now, let's get started. That winter. Thick fog covered the entire village, making the already gloomy atmosphere even colder. People closed their doors tightly. Few dared to go out after sunset. But the fear did not disappear because of that. They often heard a soft lullaby echoing from the ancient temple, the voice like that of a bride anxiously waiting, mixed with the distant sound of wedding bells. Such chilling scares caused many people to fall into a state of insomnia and panic. In the village, there was a scholar named Thomas, famous for his extensive knowledge. He did not believe in the horror stories that the villagers passed down. Determined to find an answer, he spent many nights studying ancient books, learning about traditional wedding ceremonies. Thomas discovered that, in ancient customs, if a wedding was abandoned, the bride's soul would forever be bound, unable to be released. This made him even more curious. Was Anna the living proof of that curse? Thomas decided to enter the ancient temple on a full moon night by himself. He prepared a pen and ink, a bronze mirror, and some ancient talismans he found in a book. As soon as he stepped through the threshold, a cold air immediately hit him, making him shiver. Inside, a blue light flickered, and in the middle of the main room, the wedding banquet table appeared dimly. Invisible guests sat in 2 rows of tables, but their faces were empty. Only their eye sockets were deep. On the altar, Anna stood there, her eyes sparkling as if containing an ocean of sorrow. She asked, her voice echoing as if from the bottom of a well, "Have you seen my husband?" Thomas trembled, but still firmly replied, "I came to free you." Immediately, laughter erupted from hundreds of ghostly guests, echoing like the sound of metal rubbing. Ghost stories about the unfinished wedding suddenly appeared before his eyes. Thomas quickly raised the bronze mirror and chanted a spell. The reflected light made Anna step back, her face changing from sadness to ferocity. She screamed. The sound made the whole temple shake. When Thomas thought he would be swallowed, suddenly a strong wind blew him out the gate. He fainted until the next morning. He woke up on the cold ground, still holding tightly to the cracked bronze mirror. On the mirror, the crack formed the shape of a wedding flower. In the middle of the flower was a bright red eye. From that day on, Thomas never dared to return to the ancient temple again. He could only warn the villagers that wedding cannot end, and the bride will forever look for a replacement. Since then, the haunted stories in the village have become even more terrifying. Some people said that they saw Thomas's figure standing in their dreams, but his face was haggard, his eyes were lifeless. He muttered, "Don't let her look into your eyes, otherwise you will be dragged into the eternal banquet." Many people believed that Thomas was haunted. His soul was no longer free after that encounter. The incident made the atmosphere in the village even more stifling. Any wedding must be held quietly, without music, without a bride procession. It is believed that if the wedding is too grand, Anna will come and demand a groom of her own. The chilling scares continue, imprinted in the minds of each generation. Another night, a group of curious young people tried to sneak into the ancient temple to verify Thomas's story. They brought alcohol and flashlights, joking that they would record it to prove that everything was just imagination. But at midnight, the villagers heard a loud scream from the ancient temple, followed by absolute silence. When dawn broke, the group disappeared, leaving only the phone with the last recording. The screen shook violently, then showed the image of a bride in a white dress, her smile unusually long. Behind her were hundreds of empty faces clapping their hands in congratulations. The horror stories from that video made even the most skeptical person shudder. Since then, no one has dared to joke about the legend of the forgotten bride. The ancient temple still stands there, decaying and silent, but every time the moon is full, light flickers from within, and the faint sound of wedding music echoes. The people can only pray, hoping that one day, the secret behind the groom's disappearance will be solved, so that Anna can let go of her resentment. But will that secret really bring liberation, or just open the door to an even more horrifying tragedy? Hello, everyone. Before we get started, make sure to like and subscribe, and leave a comment saying where you're from and when you watched. That way, YouTube will continue to show you stories like this. Now, let's get started. Asterisk after the incident, where the scholar Thomas almost lost his life in the ancient temple, the haunting of the forgotten bride became even more terrifying. The villagers no longer dared to step through the rotten gate, even staying away during the day. But that silence did not make the curse disappear. On the contrary, the chilling scares became more and more obvious. Many people began to hear knocking on the door at midnight. When they peeked through the crack of the door, they only saw a white figure standing silently outside the gate, her face hidden by an old veil. If the door was not opened, the knocking continued until dawn, and the next morning, that person always found on the steps a wilted bouquet of flowers, with a few drops of blood-red water on them. A young woman in the village, named Maria, recounted that her name was called 3 times in one night. Each time, the call got closer and clearer, as if it was right next to her ear. Maria was frightened and knelt down to pray, but then the mirror in the room suddenly cracked, reflecting the image of a bride standing behind her. Maria fainted, and from then on, her mind was no longer normal. Every full moon night, she would put on a white veil, hold a bouquet of dried flowers, walk out into the middle of the village road, and laugh creepy. Horror stories spread from there, making the village even more covered in a deadly atmosphere. People began to realize that Anna not only appeared in the ancient temple, but also haunted the weakest souls. There were haunted stories that said, at night, people heard footsteps right behind them, but when they turned around, they only saw wedding petals falling to the ground. A family heard children laughing loudly in their house, but when they looked around, all the doors were closed, and a white veil stained with blood appeared in the middle of the altar. One evening, a group of pilgrims passed through the village and decided to stay. They did not believe in the legend, so they gathered near the ancient communal house to sing. But after only a few songs, the whole group heard other music, the sound of wedding trumpets and drums coming from inside the communal house. Immediately, all the flames went out and darkness fell. When the light returned, a girl in a white wedding dress appeared in the middle of the group, her face hidden under a veil. They panicked and ran away, and from then on, no one in the group dared to mention the incident again. Those chilling scares made the ancient communal house even more considered a gate connecting the world of the living and the dead. An old man in the village said that Anna was originally a gentle girl, but the pain of being abandoned turned her into a soul that could not be released. The curse of the unfinished wedding made her forever search for her lost groom. Some people believed that any man who caught her eye would become a replacement groom, dragged into the ghostly banquet. Those ghost stories made the men in the village even more afraid. Many had to leave their hometown to avoid a tragic fate. On a stormy night, thunder rumbled, the wind howled. The villagers confirmed that they saw the wedding procession walking along the stone road. The light of lanterns hovered in the air. The sound of drums echoed. On the tattered palanquin, Anna sat motionless, her eyes shining brightly, looking straight ahead. When the dim procession passed by, all the dogs in the village howled. The children cried out. That night, a young man disappeared, leaving only his muddy wedding shoes in front of the communal house door. Such horror stories made the whole neighborhood start to tremble in fear. People gradually believed that not only the ancient communal house, but the whole village was cursed. Every sound of wind, every rustle of leaves was like the invisible footsteps of a ghostly bride. Every night, someone dreamed that they were forced to attend a strange wedding where the guests were all pale faces. When they woke up, they all felt tired, with red thread marks clearly visible on their wrists. Those haunted stories turned their dreams into endless obsessions. One day, an old monk from far away visited the village. He heard the story and decided to go there to pray for Anna. In the night, the temple bells rang, the candles flickered. The villagers held their breath and waited. But as soon as the chanting began, the whole temple lit up. Hundreds of white figures appeared. Laughing, creepy, Anna appeared, tears streaming down her face, but her smile was horribly distorted. Fierce wind blew everything away, and when the sky brightened, the old monk had disappeared. On the steps, only the broken rosary beads remained. The chilling scares from that night were deeply engraved in the villagers' memories. No one, not even the monks, could free that vengeful spirit. From then on, the village lived in heavy darkness. They know that the ghost wedding will continue forever until the truth about the missing groom is revealed. But who is brave enough to step into that mist, face Anna's creepy smile and hundreds of ghostly guests? More terrifying secrets await to be revealed in the next episode. Hello, everyone. Before we get started, make sure to like and subscribe, and leave a comment saying where you're from and when you watched. That way, YouTube will continue to show you stories like this. Now, let's get started. Asterisk, after the night of the haunting knocking sound that echoed throughout the village, no one dared to sleep alone. They gathered in the same house, burning incense all night long to avoid being disturbed. But it seemed that the more they tried to resist, the more obvious the presence of the ghost bride became. Chilling scares appeared more and more, not only on full moon nights, but also on normal days. Some people said that when they looked in the mirror in the morning, they saw behind them the faint shadow of a woman in a white wedding dress, her face covered by an opaque veil. When they turned back, there was no one, but the mirror always left a clear, cold handprint. Another creepy story happened to a young newlywed family. On their wedding night, when the couple had just turned off the lights, they heard the bell ringing softly in the yard. The husband went out to check, and he saw a wedding table set up right in the middle of the yard, candles lit brightly, guests sitting in rows, but none of them were present, only empty heads. At the end of the table, the bride Anna sat there, her eyes red, her smile lingering. He screamed in panic, and at that moment, all the lights went out. The next morning, the wife woke up, but her husband was nowhere to be found. On the wedding table in the house, there was only a wilted bouquet of flowers and a bloodstain. Horror stories like these made many couples no longer dare to hold a proper wedding ceremony. The haunted stories piled up. Children often cried out in the middle of the night, saying they heard someone whispering their name and saw white hands waving from the window. Old people dreamed that they were taken into a ghostly wedding procession, walking between two rows of faceless guests. When they woke up, they were all exhausted, as if they had just gone through a real ceremony. The villagers began to believe that anyone could be chosen as a replacement. In this ill-fated wedding, things became even more terrifying when that spring, a group of strangers visited the village. They were scholars who studied supernatural phenomena, carrying cameras and recording equipment. They decided to spend the night in the ancient temple to record evidence. At night, they placed the recorder in the middle of the main room, then hid in a corner. At first, everything was just terrifying silence. But then, the sound of wedding music suddenly rang out, mixed with murmuring laughter. On the camera, they clearly saw the banquet table gradually appear, each shadowy figure in white sitting in place. Anna walked over, slowly, her eyes filled with tears, but her smile was creepy. One scholar couldn't help but exclaim, "This is the forgotten bride." Immediately, Anna turned around, looking straight into the camera. The screen shook violently, then went black. The next morning, the group was missing. Only the recorder with the final sound, a whisper, "You've arrived, ... The chilling scares from that evidence made the villagers swear never to let strangers stay near the ancient temple again. The atmosphere in the village became increasingly suffocating. People live as if they are stuck between two worlds. During the day, they work normally, but when night falls, all the doors are locked. Incense smoke billows. However, even in the cramped space, they still hear slow footsteps on the porch, soft laughter, and sometimes even a sad lullaby. Some people dream that they become the groom, forced to stand next to Anna in front of hundreds of ghostly guests. When they wake up, they still feel her cold hand clasped tightly in theirs. In another chilling scare, a man returns late from hunting in the forest. When he crosses the field near the ancient temple, he sees sparkling lights as if there is a wedding party. Thinking it is an illusion, he tries to walk faster, but a voice calls out right behind him, "You're here." When he turns around, he sees Anna standing in the middle of the field, her wedding dress fluttering in the wind, her creepy smile widening. He runs away, but from that day on, his mind is no longer normal. During the day, he was silent. At night, he wore a veil, sat in the middle of the house, and giggled like a bride. The villagers began to gossip that to free Anna, They needed to find out the secret of the missing groom. But no one dared to face the truth. They could only pray and live in fear. Every full moon, the ghostly light from the ancient communal house illuminated the whole village. The sound of wedding music echoed, making everyone shiver. The question of the truth behind that unfinished wedding was still unanswered. And tonight, when the wind blew fiercely, people saw the figure of a stranger entering the communal house gate. Was this someone who dared to face it, or was he just a new soul, about to be devoured? The terrifying secret will continue to be revealed in the next episode. Hello everyone. Before we get started, make sure to like and subscribe, and leave a comment saying where you're from and when you watched. That way, YouTube will continue to show you stories like this. Now, let's get started. Asterisk after the group of scholars disappeared with the haunting camera, the villagers became even more convinced that the ancient communal house was not only cursed, but also a gateway between two worlds. Fear gradually turned into resignation. They no longer tried to resist, just quietly lived in constant obsession. The chilling scares appeared more and more clearly. People not only heard the wedding music from afar, but also smelled the faint scent of incense in the air every moonlit night. Some even swore that they saw white veils fluttering on the roof of the communal house, as if the bride was waving her scarf in the wind. One day, a rich merchant named David passed by the village. Hearing the story, he showed contempt, thinking that it was all just superstition to keep strangers from staying. He declared that he would stay in the ancient communal house overnight to prove to everyone that there was nothing to be afraid of. The villagers tried to stop him, but he did not listen, and even laughed at him. That night, he brought good wine, set the banquet table in the middle of the main hall, and sang loudly to challenge. At first, there was only a cold wind blowing, but then the sound of wedding music rang out from deep in the darkness. The oil lamp flickered, and gradually, his banquet table was no longer empty. The faceless guests sat down, raising their glasses to celebrate. In front of him, Anna appeared. Her eyes were sad, but her smile was creepy. Before David could react, a cold hand grabbed his hand and pulled him towards the altar. The next morning, people only found the messy banquet table and the old wedding ring placed right in the middle. The horror stories from David's mysterious death once again raised the surrounding terror from that event. People began to believe that anyone who dared to mock or challenge the vengeful spirit would have to pay the price. The men in the village lived in fear. They avoided the roads near the ancient temple, not daring to look directly at the full moon. Haunted stories spread everywhere. Some heard the sound of the wedding palanquin passing by the porch. Some saw Anna's silhouette standing silently outside the bedroom window, her white veil fluttering in the wind. Just one encounter, and they knew for sure that their souls had been marked. One night, a group of foolish children gathered to test their courage. They brought musical instruments, intending to play loud music in the ancient communal house to prove that they were not afraid. When the melody rang out, another sound immediately joined in: the pounding of wedding drums, the shrill sound of trumpets, and creepy laughter. A hazy scene appeared. The ghostly wedding procession approached. Terrified, the children ran away in all directions. But one person was left behind, and the next morning he disappeared, leaving only a broken string lying scattered in front of the communal house gate. Those chilling scares seemed to prove the truth that the ghost wedding will never stop. People began to rumor that every time the ancient communal house was lit up, it was a sign that a new person was about to join the eternal banquet. Some people dreamed that they were invited to sit at the wedding table, surrounded by faceless guests, whispering laughter. When they woke up, they found a few dried wedding petals stuck on their clothes, the scent of incense still lingering. Those ghost stories made the whole village no longer believe in coincidence, but consider it a warning. While the villagers fell into despair, an old shaman from a faraway land came. He claimed that he could end the curse with a revenge wedding. Ritual, that is. Reenact the wedding, give Anna a replacement groom so that her soul could rest in peace. The villagers were scared, but also had a little hope. They agreed to help him prepare. On a bright moonlit night, candles were lit, wedding flowers were arranged, and the ritual began. Anna appeared for real, standing right in the middle of the main room, but instead of being freed, her smile was distorted into a terrifying face. The whole communal house shook, screams echoed. The shaman collapsed, blood gushing from his mouth. When everything was quiet, he had stopped breathing, and Anna had disappeared as if she had never existed. The villagers understood that no one could marry the missing groom, and that curse would never end easily. From that night, the ancient communal house became an absolutely forbidden area. But the secret about the groom from the past made everyone even more curious. Who was he? Why did he disappear? And was he really taken away by a ghost? Clues began to emerge from the old wedding book that was still in the village church. But who would dare to open it again when the blood-red lines that had appeared made everyone terrified? Perhaps the answer to the groom's fate and the truth behind the bride's ghost will be revealed in the next episode. Hello, everyone. Before we get started, make sure to like and subscribe, and leave a comment saying where you're from and when you watched. That way, YouTube will continue to show you stories like this. Now, let's get started. Asterisk, after the failure of the revenge wedding ceremony, the village was plunged into complete despair. No one dared to mention Anna's name anymore. Everyone believed that anyone who called her name would be cursed. But silence did not mean safety. The chilling scares still appeared every night, more clearly and frighteningly. People heard the sound of collective footsteps walking along the stone path. Like a whole wedding procession was moving towards the ancient communal house. The moonlight cast shadows on the invisible palanquins, and the wind carried the scent of incense mixed with the stench of blood. One night, an old fisherman said that he saw a red light shining from the direction of the communal house. As he approached, he saw figures in white wedding clothes standing in rows, but without faces. On the endless banquet table, wine cups were raised automatically, clinking against each other, making a cold clinking sound. In the middle, Anna appeared. Her eyes were sad, but her smile was distorted. Suddenly, she looked straight at him and said, "Have you seen my husband?" He fainted. The next morning he woke up on the riverbank, still holding the rotten wedding bouquet. Horror stories like that made the whole village silent. No one dared to go near the ancient temple again. Meanwhile, a group of young people from outside the village heard the news and came, thinking that this was an opportunity to gain fame by discovering the truth. They found an old wedding book kept in the church, something that the villagers always avoided. When they opened it, the page was yellowed, the writing was blurred, but the name Anna was still clear. The place for the groom's name was blank. The strange thing was that right before their eyes, blood-red words gradually appeared. "I will come, don't go anywhere." One of the group panicked and wanted to run away, but the church doors slammed shut. They heard the sound of wedding music echoing from behind. When they turned around, Anna's figure stood in the dim light, her eyes glowing red. From that day on, the group disappeared without a trace, leaving only the wedding book lying in the middle of the altar, the pages soaked in moisture as if tears had just fallen. Those haunted stories made the wedding book an absolute taboo. From then on, everyone believed that the truth about the groom had been erased. Some people thought that he was a traitor, running away on the wedding night. Others insisted that he had never existed, that he was just an illusion that Anna was forced to believe. But whatever the truth was, the bride's soul was still stuck in the unfinished wedding, forcing anyone who dared to find out to pay the price. The chilling scares repeated over and over again, leaving the villagers with nothing but fear and avoidance. One night, a big storm came. Thunder and lightning seemed to tear the sky apart. Everyone closed their doors, but everyone could hear the pounding of drums. When the lightning flashed, they saw the ghostly wedding procession passing through the village, the empty eyes of the faceless guests staring at each house. On the tattered palanquin, Anna sat motionless, her hands tightly clasping a bouquet of dried flowers, her eyes shining like fire. That very night, a child disappeared, leaving only the red bracelet tied around her wrist scattered in front of the communal house door. Those horror stories haunted many families to the point that many left the village, leaving the whole area desolate. The remaining people whispered that they could free Anna only by finding the real groom. But how could they find him when all the clues disappeared on that fateful night? An old man claimed to have seen a young man standing next to Anna in his dream, his face blurry, always turning his back. But when he tried to get closer, the figure disappeared into mist. That unanswered question made the village even more trapped in a cycle of horror. Then one day, a wanderer came to the village. He claimed to have heard about the missing groom and believed he could find the truth. The villagers begged him not to be foolish, but he smiled faintly, declaring that he would enter the ancient temple that night to find the answer. As darkness fell, he disappeared behind the heavy wooden gate. The drums echoed, and a ghostly green light flared up. From afar, people saw the silhouette of a man standing next to Anna in the main hall. But was he really that wanderer, or was he the groom from 100 years ago who had just returned from the dead? That chilling answer will be revealed in the next episode. Hello everyone. Before we get started, make sure to like and subscribe, and leave a comment saying where you're from and when you watched. That way, YouTube will continue to show you stories like this. Now, let's get started. Asterisk, that night, the whole village was silent in the utmost tension. Everyone knew that the vagabond had entered the ancient communal house gate, carrying with him the belief that he would discover the truth about the missing groom. The villagers waited with bated breath, but as the night wore on, the atmosphere became heavier. The chilling scares began to appear. Dogs howled in long, drawn-out bursts. The wind whistled through the moss-covered roof tiles, and from afar came the rapid beat of the wedding drums. A few curious people ventured up to the attic to look toward the communal house. They saw a green light burst out, and then the scene of a ghost wedding dimly appeared. In the middle of the main hall, there was indeed a man standing next to Anna, holding her hand, but from that distance, no one could tell whether he was a vagabond, or the shadow of the groom who had disappeared 100 years ago. The next morning, the villagers gathered in front of the communal house. The wooden gate was still tightly closed, but on the wet ground, they saw muddy footprints scattered, a large pair and a small pair. They led inside, but there was no sign of going back out. When they tried to break the door, a strong wind blew from inside, causing everyone to fall. From the crack in the door, a white veil flew out, falling to the ground, and underneath the veil were a few drops of fresh blood. Horror stories about the vagabond's disappearance quickly spread, and people whispered that he had officially become the replacement groom at the haunted banquet. But the tragedy did not stop there. The next night, the villagers heard a mournful lullaby echoing throughout the night. Anyone who accidentally heard it fell ill, their bodies emaciated as if drained of life. A young woman recounted in panic that she had dreamed of a wedding, where Anna and the vagabond stood in the ceremony before hundreds of faceless guests. When the officiant announced the couple, she was forced to clap. When she woke up, her hands were sore and red as if they had been hit. Haunted stories like these make the haunting of the ill-fated wedding even more profound. Another creepy detail is gradually revealed. People notice that every time the ancient communal house lights up, strange objects appear on the altars in people's houses. Sometimes a broken ring, sometimes a wilted bouquet of flowers, and even once a pair of muddy wedding gloves. No one dares to touch them. They burn incense and pray, then bury them deep in the ground. But even so, the presence of the ghost bride is still stronger. Chilling scares keep happening. Knocking on the door, footsteps, a white shadow appearing, and disappearing on the porch. An old woman in the village, who is over 70, decided to try to summon the spirit to ask Anna directly. During the night, she lit incense, sat in front of the communal house door, and prayed. Suddenly, the surrounding scene changed. She found herself lost in an unfinished wedding ceremony. Anna stood in front of him, her eyes filled with tears, her voice trembling as she asked, "Have you seen my husband?" The old woman tried to calm herself down, replying that the villagers had searched everywhere but couldn't find him. Immediately, Anna's smile distorted, her eyes glowing red. "You have betrayed me. If you can't bring my husband back, I will make you all become guests at this wedding." The old woman screamed and collapsed. The next morning, people found her lying motionless in front of the communal house gate. Her silver hair turned jet black, as if her age had been reversed. In the night, those ghost stories spread even more terror. After that incident, no one in the village dared to challenge the vengeful spirit anymore. But curiosity still smoldered. Some people believed that the real clue was in the cursed wedding book, and if they could read the remaining pages, they might know what had happened to the groom. But everyone was afraid, because anyone who had touched it had disappeared. The mystery of the man standing next to Anna that night has yet to be solved. Tonight, the wind blows cold again. The full moon hangs high in the sky. From the ancient temple, a green light spreads throughout the village. The sound of wedding music resounds loudly. The villagers hold their breath and look towards that place, and in the dim light, they see the ghostly wedding procession once again passing through the stone path. But this time, in addition to Anna's figure, there is clearly a groom walking beside her. Is that the wanderer who has been imprisoned forever, or is it the real groom who has returned from the dead? That secret will be revealed in the next episode, when the truth about the ghost wedding gradually comes to light. Hello everyone. Before we get started, make sure to like and subscribe, and leave a comment saying where you're from and when you watched. That way, YouTube will continue to show you stories like this. Now, let's get started. *, the full moon. That night was so bright that the whole village seemed to be bathed in cold silver. From afar, the villagers saw the ghostly wedding procession appear once again, but it was different from the previous times. This time, beside Anna, there was really a man walking, wearing an ancient wedding dress. His face was blurry and unclear. The drums beat rapidly, the trumpets blared, mixed with the creepy laughter of the faceless guests. The chilling scares made all the villagers hide in their houses. No one dared to open their eyes. The procession went through the village, straight into the ancient communal house. From inside came the sound of a wedding announcement, sounding like the voice of an old master of ceremonies. Immediately after, the whole village was shaken by the unanimous shouts of blessing. But the sound did not sound like a human voice, but like hundreds of dry bones colliding with each other. Some bold people pressed their ears to the ground and affirmed that they heard the sound of the banquet table underground, the clattering of dishes, and the endless ghostly whispers. Horror stories about that moment spread to remote areas, turning the village into an abandoned place. The next day, when a group of villagers ventured in, they found the main hall filled with wilted flowers and half-burned candles. In the middle of the altar, 2 wedding chairs were placed side by side, but empty. On the floor, an ancient red string was torn and scattered everywhere, covered in mud and blood. The shadow of the groom was never clear, but his presence was everywhere, like an indispensable part of the ill-fated banquet. Some people believed that it was the wanderer who had been swallowed, while others affirmed that it was the spirit of the groom from 100 years ago who had just returned. But no one dared to go deeper to verify. The haunted stories could only confirm one thing: the ghost wedding had found the groom, and it would not stop. In the following months, the village gradually sank into absolute silence. Each family quietly left, leaving behind their homes and haunting memories. The survivors were emaciated, living in fear. At night, they still heard the wedding music echoing from the ancient temple. But this time, the sound was clearer, more urgent, as if the wedding was really taking place. Some people said they saw the ghostly silhouettes of a couple walking along the stone path, hand in hand, eyes staring straight ahead without blinking. The chilling scares made the haunting no longer a legend, but a reality that appeared every day. A child in the village recounted that he once saw Anna standing by the window of his house, her wedding dress fluttering in the wind, and beside her was a strange groom. The man looked at him, his eyes pitch black and bottomless, then whispered, "Never leave the wedding unfinished." When the child screamed, both disappeared, leaving behind dried flower petals covering the windowsill. The horror stories from the child's mouth spread the fear even more. A scholar from far away came, carrying the belief that he could solve this mystery. He believed that the groom was the spirit whose name had been erased from the wedding book, and that his appearance signaled that the wedding was complete. But when he was about to enter the communal house to verify, the wooden door slammed shut, and all night long, the villagers only heard terrible screams. The next morning, in front of the communal house door, there was only broken glass and a few half-burned pages. Ghost stories like that only confirmed that no one could approach the truth, because the truth belonged to another world. In the end, the village was abandoned, leaving only the ancient communal house in the middle of the dense forest. But people said that every time the moon was full, if you passed by, you could still hear the echoing wedding music and see the ghostly wedding procession passing through the moss-covered stone path. The bride Anna was still there, no longer alone, but walking alongside the ghostly groom. They walked forever into the mist, leaving behind laughter, tears, and unfulfilled vows. Those chilling scares turn the legend into a warning. There are weddings that are never allowed to end, and abandoned souls will forever seek justice in the darkness. And tonight, when the moon hangs full in the sky again, who will be brave enough to step through the ancient temple gates, facing the ghost couple and hundreds of faceless guests? Or will this curse continue, spreading to other lands? That is still left open in the following stories.